Getting underneath what is underneath is critical to true freedom and happiness. Building our relationship with our Spirit of the universe takes time. He has been with us the whole time. It has been us who hasn't engaged. All relationships take effort. If we ignore our significant other, only acknowledge them when we need something, that relationship will not grow. Same with our higher power. We are better people when we are less concerned with ourselves and have a real interest in others. We are seekers after all. That is how we find and keep on the spiritual plane. We're going to start with the Serenity Prayer, and then we'll go into the daily reflections. If you or someone you know are questioning yourselves about whether or not you're an alcoholic or whether they are an alcoholic or drug addict, reach out. We can help you. You don't have to do it alone. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Grant me patience with the struggles that take time, and appreciation for all that I have, tolerance of those with different struggles, and the strength to get up and try again, one day at a time. Free at last, May 10th. Another great dividend we may expect from confiding our defects to another human being is humility, a word often misunderstood. It amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 58. I knew deep inside that if I were ever to be joyous, happy, and free, I had to share my past life with some other individual. The joy and relief I experienced after doing so were beyond description. Almost immediately after taking the 5th step, I felt free from the bondage of self and the bondage of alcohol. That freedom remains after 36 years, a day at a time. I found that God could do for me what I couldn't do for myself. We have a natural desire to be free. We want to be free from the limitations of our circumstances, the constraints of societal expectations, and the shackles of our own shortcomings. For us alcoholics, the desire for freedom is particularly intense. We yearn for the freedom to live a life that is not dictated by our addiction, to be able to make choices based on our own values and desires rather than the whims of our disease. Achieving this freedom is not a simple task. It requires a deep understanding of ourselves and a willingness to confront our shortcomings. One of the fundamental principles of AA is the idea of telling our defects to another human being in the 5th step. It is rooted in the belief that by sharing our experiences, particularly the negative ones, we can begin to break down the walls of isolation that have kept us trapped in our addiction. By opening up to another person, we expose our shortcomings, allowing them to see who we truly are, with all our flaws and imperfections. This process can be uncomfortable and even painful, but it is a necessary step in the journey towards freedom. The idea of sharing our defects with another person is not a new one. In fact, it is a common practice in many religions and spiritual traditions. The Catholic Church, for example, has a sacrament known as the confession, in which individuals confess their sins to a priest in order to receive absolution. Similarly, in the Islamic tradition, there's a practice called tawbah, which involves confessing one's sins and seeking forgiveness from Allah. Humility is closely tied to confession. When we confess our defects to another person, we are acknowledging that we are not perfect, that we are flawed and in need of help. It can be a difficult realization, particularly for those of us who have spent much of our lives trying to hide our weaknesses. It is only through this acknowledgement that we can begin to make progress towards becoming the people who we want to be. Bill wrote extensively about the importance of humility in recovery. In As Bill Sees It, he writes, "We must develop real humility. Without it, we cannot live to much useful purpose or attain lasting serenity." He believed that humility was essential for living a sober life, as it allows us to recognize our limitations and accept help from others. It can be intimidating. We may fear others will judge us or reject us if they know the truth about our past. As we begin the process, we find that others are more accepting and understanding than we anticipated because they have been where we have been. The act of sharing can create a sense of intimacy and connection that has been missing in our lives. Bill recognized the transformative power of sharing our experiences with others. The Big Book says we are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free. We cannot subscribe to the belief that this life is a vale of tears, though it once was just that for many of us. But it is clear that we made our own misery. By sharing our past experiences, we begin to take ownership of our lives, to recognize that we have the power to change our circumstances when we align our will with our higher power's will. This realization can be incredibly liberating, and it paves the way for a way of life that is truly free. The process of sharing our defects is ongoing. It is not a one-time event, but rather a continual process of self-reflection and growth. As we continue to work through our shortcomings, we often find that new defects emerge or that old ones resurface. By continuing to be vulnerable, we can continue to move forward on the path towards freedom. When we work the fifth step, the key component of it is a belief in a higher power. It can take many forms and is not necessarily tied to any particular religion or tradition. It is closely related to the concept of surrender. When we recognize that we cannot control our addiction on our own, we must surrender to a power greater than ourselves. Again, it can be scary, as it requires us to let go of our sense of control and trust that things will work out in the end. It is only through surrender that we are able to find true freedom. In the 12 and 12, it says, the central characteristic of the concept of surrender is that we do not struggle against the universe, trying to oppose our will upon it. If we do that, we are doomed to failure, frustration, and despair. Surrender means acceptance, which means we are no longer in conflict with the universe. We do not oppose the flow of life, but rather we become part of it. The combination of confession and surrender is incredibly powerful in the journey towards freedom. By sharing our defects with another person, we open ourselves to the possibility of change. By surrendering to a higher power, we allow ourselves to let go of the things that are holding us back. These two practices can create the sense of peace and serenity that is often missing in our lives prior to finding AA. We cannot get real vulnerability without having our foundation in a faith of a higher power. Free at last, May 10th. Another great dividend we may expect from confiding our defects to another human being is humility, a word often misunderstood. It amounts to a clear recognition of what and who we really are, followed by a sincere attempt to become what we could be. 12 Steps and 12 Traditions, page 58. I knew deep inside that if I were ever to be joyous, happy, and free, I had to share my past life with some other individual. The joy and relief I experienced after doing so were beyond description. Almost immediately after taking the fifth step, I felt free from the bondage of self and the bondage of alcohol. That freedom remains after 36 years, a day at a time. I found that God could do for me what I couldn't do for myself. Please subscribe for more videos. Thank you for watching.